on the cold, frozen tundra of the Great White North.
Or at least in the eyes of most Americans.
Craig Knight speaks to unique Canadians who have made a difference in music, film, television, and more. Join us for another episode of UCanNow with Craig Knight.
Well, here we are. We've made it to the second episode of the podcast. I'm Craig Knight, and I want to welcome you to UCanNow, in conversation with unique Canadians. I'm not sure if you were around the last episode, but we had an interview with Ruud Van Steens of the band Arson. Ruud went through a whole bunch of really cool shit with regards to punk rock in Toronto in the 1970s. This episode, we're going to sit down with Mendelson Joe, artist, activist, musician, iconoclast. This guy is just one of the coolest people on the planet, and I was really thrilled to talk to him. I was actually quite nervous to talk to Joe. I first heard of him back in the 70s, and through my cousins, as I mentioned actually in the piece, and they introduced me to his band called Mainline. Man, the guy's just such a fantastic blues guitar player. And I was a little bit nervous to talk to him because he's a little bit of an introvert. He's a little bit of a guy who likes to do his own thing, and he's not really necessarily a people person. So I was a little bit concerned that maybe we weren't going to get along. And actually, that's why we decided to do this via Skype. Joe doesn't always like people, and decided just in case we didn't hit it off, that it was best for me not to make the 3-hour drive up to where he is. So we did it via Skype, which makes things a little bit more difficult because, as you know, when you're not sitting in front of somebody, you don't always get the same sort of touch and feel that comes to an in-person conversation. So you'll hear it. You'll hear it. Well, I think it came out pretty good, and I think Joe's a really interesting guy, and I think we really touched on a few really decent things. This podcast is opening up a lot of doors, and there's a lot of people already getting interested. We haven't done a whole lot of episodes to date. I mean, we've done one. There's interest in Canadian talent, and there's interest in what's going on here. And I think, if you stick along for the ride, there's going to be a lot of really cool things coming. Coming up in December, the interview with Heidi von Plask to December. She's actually going to be working on a series at that time, so we decided to do that on set. So that's coming up. Comedian Mike McDonald, we're going to sit down with at Yuck Yucks, and that's coming up in the first week of December. There's all kinds of cool things coming up, and I'm really excited about the way things are turning out, and I'm really glad you're along for the ride. So let's get to it. Let's jump right into the interview with Joe, and we'll take it from there. The way I sort of discovered you back in the day was through Mainline. I had some cousins up in Sudbury that basically introduced me to music and bands like Grand Funk and that sort of thing. And I just remember this Mainline album they had. Can you tell me about your beginnings in Toronto? Like, you're from Toronto originally, right?
I was born in Toronto in 1944. So I lived in Toronto, and then in 1958 my parents bought a farmhouse north of the city, so I lived north. I lived in a rural community then from 1958 till 1964. Then I was on my own at 19, and I don't know what else to say. That music is just a gift that I recognized that I could hear what I loved, and then all I had to do was learn how to play it, and I did.
Do you remember the first record you ever bought?
It was a 1978, and it was probably Little Richard's Long Tall Sally on Regent Records, which goes back to, I don't know what year that was, 56, 57, 58, 57 or 56, but it could have been other records. I mean, I bought records as soon as the artist that interested me most was Jimmy Reed. Okay. But his records were not available, so I bought Elvis. Early Elvis. Elvis was a great artist for a couple of years, his recording career, but he got stupid fairly quick. But Jerry Lee's music, Little Richard, Ray Charles. Those are individuals whose work had a profound effect on me, and I can't explain why. It just did.
Was that the kind of stuff you were playing when you first started playing?
An older sister who was given a guitar when I was born, I think, to placate her, to give her a diversion from having to put up with having a baby brother 12 years her junior. So I learned to play guitar because she had a guitar but never played it because she doesn't have any musical gift. Whereas with me, it was an easy thing. It's a natural. I'm a natural, one of these people who I have a natural ability to make something out of nothing. And so I taught myself how to play guitar, and I'm still learning at age 7.2.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it? To keep learning rather than to just kind of settle on something.
Sorry for interrupting. The key is you have to have the appetite, and it's that simple. And if you have the appetite or the passion or whatever word you would describe, it's just there, and it's up to the individual to respect it.
Well, slide guitar, was that something that you would influence you to pick up the slide?
I mean, Muddy Waters, I'm sure. I learned to play slide guitar just because I was emulating, I think, Muddy Waters, who had a great effect on me probably in around 64, 65. I was very interested in his music, and I still am today because he made some great records, especially records with, don't tell me his name. Don't tell me his name. There's something wrong with my brain. Little Walter.
So when you were in Toronto was it in the 60s that you started playing the clubs around Toronto? When did that band first?
I was a folky dokey, hokey folky dokey. I went out and did it for money in 64. That's when I started making money from it. But I probably played the school dances and all that stuff in high school. But I don't remember any of that because I guess it's not that important to me. But I do remember doing music jobs for money in 64. I was 19, and I couldn't believe the money I was making, and I was still working in a warehouse at the same time. So it was, I just I liked blues music, and blues and folk music were often cohabitating in clubs, folky dokey, hokey dokey, floky clubs.
Was Dylan around at that time, I guess? Was he any kind of influence on you?
Well, I had heard of him, but I wasn't interested in him. I only became really interested in Bob Dylan in a big way was when I heard the recording he made called You Gotta Serve Somebody. Have you ever heard it?
Yes.
That recording, the song, the lyrics, and the song, and the recording are, for me, his best work because his recordings are, I'm just not a huge fan of Bob Dylan, other than I recognize he was a formidable force for change in America and subsequently to the world through his earlier work. And but I would never, if someone said, "Would you like to go and hear Bob Dylan?" I'd say, "Pay me a fee."
Do you think that's the responsibility of an artist, though, to initiate change?
No. I think the responsibility of, if we're talking about real artists as opposed to people who emulate and synthesize saccharine garbage, real artists don't know what they're out, they can't control it. Mm-hmm. Real artists do things that they don't understand. The responsibility of a real artist is to be true to his or her art, whatever that is.
However it's interpreted is not up to you. It's not your problem.
No, I don't think about what anybody thinks about. I think about what I think about in terms of what I'm going to do, what I'm painting today, or what music I'm playing. And I play the guitar every day. I don't think about it. I just do it. And that's how I keep learning, because inevitably when you play at something, or whether you use the word play as in playfulness or just play as a purpose to make music, especially when you're a self-taughter, which is what I am, the sky's the limit. There's just no end to it, because if you do it because you love doing it, then you're liable to stumble with grace.
You basically formed the band, I guess. When did that come together? The Mainline.
Michael Mckenna, who was the other guitar player, he placed an ad, I think, in one of the newspapers. It might have been the Telegram. I can't remember which newspaper, but it was in '68, and he said he was looking to start a blues band. So I had known of him. I didn't know him personally, but I had known of him as being an electric guitar player. And so I answered the ad, and we got together and we jammed, and right away there was a musical marriage, so to speak. And that's how the band started. It was literally the ability to jam with somebody. It was a natural experience, which is the best kind.
When you're playing in this band, what year was that?
Well, '68, we started the group. We had some starts and stops along the road in '68, in the summer of '68. So I was 23 when we started the group. So, and eventually we evolved, and finally, I knew that our future. I was the songwriter, not originally, but originally we played a few songs of other people that we liked, like Willie Dixon's song "Spoonful." I remember it was a big successful song for us when we would play the Vomitoria, and that was with the second bass player. We had Dennis Gerard, who was a masterful, really an idiot savant on the bass, just beyond any description. He was as unpredictable a bass player and as dexterous as you could find. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with him. And then the next bass player was the bass player who played on the album Stink, Mike Harrison, who I consider to be my mentor as a bass player. I play bass too.
Oh, you do? Okay. So I play bass as well.
I play a lot of instruments because I taught myself how to play.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I play bass too. I play guitar sort of to get by, to write songs with, but bass playing is what I've been sort of making a career at.
It's the most important instrument in contemporary popular music. If the bass isn't right, there's no hope for the song.
I agree. It sets the foundation for sure.
It's everything. There's nothing more important than the bass. To me. And then I'm also taught myself how to play drums to the extent that I play them on my records. So the bottom line is it's just, I love learning how to play new instruments. If I had an accordion, I'd probably be playing accordion. But don't send me one, please. If there's public listening, don't send me an accordion. I don't want things. I have everything really that I need in terms of things.
Except an accordion.
I don't want stuff. People send me stuff sometimes, and I don't want unsolicited gifts or anything. Although I listen to people's recordings if they send them to me, but I don't want other objects, please.
After this band sort of breaks up, how did you segue immediately? Did you get your deal with Anthem for the Mendelson Joe stuff right away, or were you?
No. After I left the group in '72 because I knew we were doing a very brief tour, 3-city tour. It was all, hotels, airplanes, and that was it. We did Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg in a short period. I don't know how, it seemed like 4 or 5 days. We did the first show was in Calgary in '72, and I was doing my job. I was a singer and guitar player and harmonica player, and I had what I would describe, and I don't have these things that often, but it was an epiphany, and I said, this is not for me. I wasn't happy, and it wasn't the musical problem. It wasn't music that was the problem. The problem was I was not happy with the people I worked with, and it was not that they were harmful to me. I am a problem. It's the only way to put it. I don't get along well with people that easily. And I recognized that I was not happy working with, when you work in a band, you're traveling together nonstop, and sometimes you're staying in hotels, and it's a culture. And the culture of the band, I felt more and more alienated. I was alienated from the day one. but the alienation became greater, and I put the problem completely on my shoulders in that I don't integrate well with assholes.
And you were doing some pretty big tours at that. You were in Europe. You were all over Canada. You were all over the place.
Yeah, Australia was where I really should have quit after the first Australian tour. But the bottom line is as soon as in 1972 in Calgary, I told them right after the show, we were playing on the Calgary Stampede outside at some concert. And I said, I'll be leaving after we finish the Winnipeg job, which was a few days, 3 or 4 days later. And that was it for me. And I regret that I ever came back and did one more record with them at the behest of my pimp at the time in 75. So once it's over with me.
So you're not playing they're still playing around now. You don't play any further dates with them?
I haven't played with these people in decades, many decades.
So you were not. I know they closed the El Macambo the last time it closed, and you weren't part of that gig.
No, I don't do any of that shit.
Okay.
I don't play any of the vomitoria unless I'm paid huge money. To me, it's depressing to play to people who drink. Hey, I've done all that. I did that when I was a teenager.
So when did the solo stuff start? Was that?
Well, I was a soloist before I was in a group. So I was a soloist when I was playing in the Hokey Dokey Folky clubs, and I liked it. So that was good, and I still like it. I like playing by myself, but I also enjoy playing with musicians who I can not just commune with musically, but can tolerate in terms of their extra musical behavior, such as being on time, whether or not they treat people with contempt or respect. I'm interested in the whole package when I deal with people, if I'm lucky enough to be able to meet people who are civil.
I know. So the Shuffle Demons played on. Was it your first record?
No. Shuffle Demons. That was a great idea. Colin Linden's idea. That was in '88. Colin had an idea that I should make a record with them. It was his idea, and he put it together. And to a great extent, he was definitely he was a real factor in that record, in the sense that he coordinated playing with Richard and the members of the Shuffle Demons. And I give him full credit for that. The record was pretty good, too. It never got played on the radio, though, nor did a lot of my records have never been able to get played on the radio, except in minimalist sort of never significant since Stink. The Stink record in '69 was one of those deals where it was at the right place at the right time with the right music, with the right story. Timing is a factor in the music business. The content is irrelevant. You can take great music and make a great recording, as so many people I know have made. I'm thinking of Scott Merritt when I said that. He has a record called the Detour Home. It's a masterpiece. Bob Wiseman's record, the Accidentally Acquired Beliefs, masterpiece. I never use the term masterpiece. The key is you have to be at the right place at the right time with the right exposure and have a great pimp. And without the great pimp, there's no hope, because the pimp is more important than anything. You can sell anything to anybody if you have the right salesperson. I use the term pimp because that's exactly what they do. They're pimping a product,
right.
And that's the group and or the music and or the image. So nowadays you have to have a great video. You have to have a great recording. It helps if the record company spends money to make sure that the public hears of your music through advertising, and you have to have the support of the record label, if you have a label, to go out and make sure it gets played on the radio. Nowadays, it can happen in all kinds of different ways. It can come in the back door through YouTube, or it can come in the side door when you're advocated for by some significant name, such as Eric Clapton, who can advocate for the songs of J.J. Cale.
So you think it is a part of the artist's responsibility, though, the musician or whoever, to market their product, to get it out so that people can actually hear it?
I'm not sure it's their responsibility. I think their responsibility is to play the music well. Or if they're songwriters or composers, they have to compose and write good songs or songs that they believe in. Then it's all about persistence on the back of the so-called artist who is either interpreting the songs or singing his or her songs. It's about persistence, and it helps if you love what you do. But after a certain point, the process of going out and doing all this music, it helps if you get support from the public, which in the case with Mainline, it happened because we were very good at what we did. But I, as a solo artist, I get some support. Some people think what I do is significant, but I think that probably I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
You toured with Rush, too, didn't you, in the 70s?
Yes, of course. Well, I was managed by their manager, and I made a few albums for Anthem, which is the label they're on in Canada. Yeah, I toured, a few jobs in Ontario with Rush, but Rush's audience hated me.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That was my next question.
They hated me because I was the antithesis of Rush. I played blues-based music, and Rush's music, as you probably know, is unlike blues in every way. It's very complex. I wouldn't even know how to describe it other than being uniquely Rush.
And then that was what, Caress of Steel, I think, was their record at the time, wasn't it?
I have no idea. Yeah. I've been subjected to their music. I can't tell you. I know that I toured just briefly, did a few jobs from, I think, Thunder Bay down to, I don't even remember all the jobs other than I used their equipment, and they were very nice to me. And those people, the guys in Rush, were very respectful of me. It was their manager who was trying to promote me using Rush as a draw, and I would open shows for them. And I did fine work. I thought I did great, using all their equipment. One guy playing through thousands of amps, thousands of huge volume. I like playing loud, by the way. I'm good at it.
So when did the art come up? Was it something that you did as a kid, or you just?
No, well, I've been, as a child, like most kids, I drew pictures of motorcycles, airplanes, cars, boats, and of course the mammary gland, female mammary glands. I've got a big thing for the female breasts. So,
and you did a piece on that, 24 nipples too, right?
Yeah, but I think it turned out to be 40 nipples because I can't stop, so many nipples, so many nipples. So, and think about it. That's the meaning of life. The female mammary gland is the meaning of life if you're a baby and you want lunch. So the solo, what's the question?
I was just how art came into it as well. Was it?
Painting. Yeah. It was just by default. I found the paints in the garbage, and I just tried to see what it was like, and it was obvious that it was easy. I could do it, and it gave me great relief from the music business, because when you can make a painting, you don't have to go to a show, you don't have to carry equipment. All you have to do is paint. In the case with me, painting. So it was the perfect antidote to the disgusting business of the music business. It's not anything I would want to do. And the music business is horrible.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything that can. Well, it's dying now anyway. So.
Well, yeah, but it's still going to go forward. I mean, if there's a Jack White, there will be a music business, and he is the music business now. It's all a question of who wants to share their cookies.
Part of your art, as when you started the painting, was that sort of in between when you finished with Mainline and then started your solo career, and this was sort of your out in between, or did it just?
It was just accidental.
Yeah.
It was in 1975. I found the paints and I tried it, and it was just, I never thought about it. I just did it because it gave me pleasure, relief. But I was going through changes. I had done that mistake in the second tour of Australia because King Biscuit Boy canceled on Mainline. He was their front man after Ricky James was. I just did it because I liked it. It never occurred to me that I'd ever be doing it the rest of my life, or that my paintings would amount to anything. I didn't think about it.
Did you know you had that ability?
Well, when you do something, if you're a baker and you really have an affinity for making something that tastes good and you love the process of doing it, you recognize, at least if you're conscious, that this is something I love, or I enjoy, or I would like to do again. And with painting, I now term myself a pathological painter. I do it religiously, probably more than I don't stop. I'm one of these people who does it almost every day of my life.
How do you decide or what to paint in the morning? Is it just something that comes upon you, or do you decide you want to paint a portrait today or a landscape today? How does it come?
Well, that's a very good question. Some days you're working on something you've been working on for a period of time. So it's called, you get up and you do the job. So if I started to make a painting, as I have recently, about Stephen Harper's unilateral war, which has already produced blood on his hands for his unilateral war. As we speak, two of our soldiers have been murdered by people who are either associated with or very influenced by ISIL or ISIS in response to Harper's warring unilaterally with this Islamic State, which many people think should not exist. But if you're a Muslim, maybe some people think it should. It's a different culture than our culture here. In every respect, including the interpretation of what it is to be a Muslim. I'm working on a painting about that, but I'm also working on several other paintings. Sometimes I work on several things at once because while paint dries, you can go to the next painting. I use acrylic paint, so you can, if you have a lot of ideas, you can continue on different wavelengths. So I don't wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to paint the fog, but the fog this morning was great, and I should jump into a fog painting. But right now I'm very busy painting several different paintings at once, and that's how it is. It's inspiration is really the true gift. The question is how to organize your time to get things done.
How do you differentiate between a commissioned painting and then painting something that you do yourself? Is there a different thought process?
Yes, there is. When you're doing a commission, first of all, you're doing what someone asks you to do, and they pay you to do it. In the case with me, they pay me a fee, and there are some things I will not do and some things I will do. It depends upon the request, not the amount of money, but the request. And I've had some bad experiences doing commissions over the years, and I've had some good experiences. In this case, I am actually just embarking upon a commission as well as the other things I just mentioned. So it's a question of whether I'm attracted to the idea. And of course, I am influenced by whether or not a person makes demands of me. So if you were to commission me to paint a picture of your dog, but you told me that it had to be this and this and this and this, I'd say I'm not interested. I like it when people don't tell me what to do other than say, would you paint a picture of my dog, period. Don't tell me how to do it. Don't tell me where to do it, blah, blah. Let me just accept the fact that I can paint a dog. I haven't done a dog painting as a commission, by the way, but I just chose that as an example.
No, of course. I mean, if they want your ability, then they should let you be free to do what you want to do.
Well, they're clearly hiring me because of my specific style and the content of what I've done for the last 39.8 years. And it's almost 40 years I've been painting.
And how did your paintings actually get recognized out there? Did someone come by and say, hey, I want to rep you, or did you find a pimp to do that at that time, or what actually took you from?
Well, many pimps followed, but the thing is they like to be called art dealers. So the bottom line is because at the time I started painting, I still had a relatively a minor, but I was still considered by some people to be famous as a result of my musical work. I had made several albums. I had made my first solo album in '72, just after I left the group. Then I made one in 75. I made two in '75. So being famous for whatever reason, whether you're a basketball player or you're a musician, it doesn't really matter. If you're famous, you're famous. So it's your responsibility when you are famous to take advantage of what that means. In the case with Neil Young right now, he's using his fame and fortune and celebrity to educate people about global warming. So I have never achieved any significant amount of fame, even remotely like Neil Young, but at that time in Canada and probably in England and in Australia, I was famous for, I always say, for 10 seconds. So the fact that I was famous meant to an art dealer who was prepared to give me a show, they recognized that I was famous, which is part of the selling process. The other process, if you're in the art business, is it helps if the artist has talent or he or she can produce something that is identifiable as being original. Well, originality has never been my problem. So it's when you're self-taught, you're inevitably going to be original.
But all the marketing I've seen of you that I remember anyway was always the music and the art. It was always something together. They were never separate.
Well, thank you. I don't see any difference between the two, and in my experience, it's all the same to me because I'm the guy who's doing it. Mm-hmm. So but I recognize that the fine art market is very different than the contemporary popular music business. So they are very dissimilar in many respects. Fine art is still, especially in English Canada, considered to be somewhat of an elitist kind of part of culture, whereas contemporary popular music is not considered to be elitist. It's considered to be pretty much Boston pizza. So the whole thing is, however you've perceived me as a multimedia artist, I'm pleased that you have perceived me. So it bespeaks of your consciousness and my good fortune.
Well, your work is certainly admirable, and you've done a lot of things with it. Not only do you I mean, you speak of Neil Young and his activism and standing up for global rights. You've done quite a bit of that yourself.
Yes, I've been in 1980. I was fasting for 100 days against the use of nuclear power. I'm still totally against nuclear power as a resource for power generation. The only hope for power generation, if there's going to be a planet with humans, let alone other species, will be the use of the sun and the power of the wind with respect to waves and tides. And the other probable source will be geothermal, which means from within the earth. All these other things, to a great extent, are just oil and gas and nuclear. These are what I would call the doomsday technologies. Nuclear power is the worst thing we've ever produced. That's why nuclear bombs are so frightening, because they're doomsday technologies. And the use of nuclear power is a doomsday in all kinds of reasons. Not just, most people are concerned about the cost of nuclear power in dollars and cents, but the real issue is the byproduct of nuclear power is radioactive waste. They'll never figure out what to do with it. They want to put it in someone's backyard or someone's basement, but they never want to put it in the politicians' basements.
You're involved with Energy Probe on that, right?
I was. I was very much involved with them, but I always stood by myself in my protest stations. And Energy Probe, at that period of my life, around 1980, I supported them. I helped them raise a lot of money with my paintings, but I'm not so aligned with them anymore. I'm not sure where they stand on nuclear power anymore. I think they've done a rethinking, whereas my thinking has not changed whatsoever.
And you're also involved with Artists Against Racism.
I am. I'm co-founder, and I am very involved with that in my capacity as a anti-racist, anti-homophobic, anti-misogynistic, outspoken person. And the witness to my work is best illustrated on the album called Women Are the Only Hope, which is my view of our hope for existence. There are exceptions. Some women I would accept from that thesis, but by default, women are the only hope. Men have proven to be nothing but domineering, self-important, egocentric thugs.
And this is not a new thought process, too. You've been saying this for a long time.
Well, I'm an adult now. That's a great song, eh? I'm an adult now.
It is a good song.
That song.
So is Women Are the Only Hope. That's a great song, too.
Say that again, sir?
So is your song, Women Are the Only Hope. That's a great song.
Yeah, I think it is, too. I think of it as, of all my songs that I would say, of the top 50 that I would say I'm not embarrassed by, it's probably the best song I ever wrote, because it is literally the hope for the world. And there is no other hope that I can imagine, because until women enjoy complete equity, parity, rights to education, rights to experience democracy as best they can, we're screwed. It's proof that when men are in charge, all we do is rape, pillage for profit and God, and that's a problem.
How was your relationship with your mother and your sister? Did you have any other brothers and sisters as well, or just the one sister?
No, just one sister. My mother and I, we got along sometimes, sometimes not. I was not a happy camper as a child. I withdrew into music, which was my savior, no question of that. But I've had a privileged life. I've been born in Canada. Anybody who's been raised here, if they're lucky enough not to have been perverted by some sort of ideology or physical abuse, I think I was probably a victim of some psychological abuse, but I did not have a deep relationship with my parents. And as much as I think they tried their best, but they found me to be not conforming. And my sister and I never had much to do with each other because she is so much older. She was 12 years old when I was born, or 11 and 11 and 3/4 before when I was born. So, and she and I, as much as we shared the same parents, we just don't have that much in common in any cultural way. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm from another planet, really.
Yeah, I'm adopted myself, and I know I went through that too, being in, coming into a family sort of as a stranger and thinking that you're just going to fit in, and it doesn't always work. So
but you fit in with whom you ever can fit in with. I would love to have fitted in, or I would love to have them fitting with me, or supported my eccentricity or my interest in doing things for themselves. But I'm sure, I shouldn't say this, I'm not sure, but I hope in your case, because you introduced yourself as being an adopted child, I hope that you've bonded with all kinds of people in your life, because I've bonded with tons of people who I'm not related to, but I love. There are people I love and respect and adore, and they are the fabric of my happiness.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what it comes down to, is the fact that we find people that can respect us for us, rather than demand we conform to some vision that they've already set for us.
Yes. So you got it clear.
I agree with you there. So,
we agree.
what else can we talk about here? You had surgery in 2002. You had a close call?
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, I had read about the fact that it would be good for people who are concerned about heart attacks to take an aspirin a day. And I asked my doctor, who I'm friends with, and he said he didn't see anything wrong with it. He failed to tell me the dosage. So, of course, I took an aspirin a day, and I started bleeding to death in 2002 after taking aspirin a day for years. So I literally, the aspirin rotted out my part of my intestinal system. So bleeding to death is, it's what had happened.
So you did this on your own, or because you had heart problems and were told?
No, I didn't have heart problems. My problems are humans. So I, for some reason, thought I asked my buddy Philip, who is a doctor, whether he thought it was all right to take an aspirin a day for heart reasons. He said, sure. He didn't tell me what to do or tell me the dosage. And unfortunately, I was taking an adult dose every day for I don't know how many years. Maybe it was as few as 2 or 3. But in any event, now we know it's common knowledge that you have to take a child's dosage and I didn't even have heart problems. Now I still don't have heart problems. What I have is I have learned that to ask questions of our doctors, especially if we're friends, and say, how much should I take of this? How much cheese is a good amount of cheese? So let there be cheese, please. So the bottom line is I was bleeding to death. And so I got lucky that the doctor in Huntsville was persistent. His name is Dr. Roy Kirkpatrick. He saved my life. He sent a TV crew up my bum and looked for a place to understand what's happened. He figured it out. I was bleeding to death. There's no question. It wasn't painful or anything. It was unpleasant being around other people because I like being alone, especially when people are crying and screaming in pain. So ultimately, he fixed me up, cut out part of my intestine, upper intestine, and sewed me up, and the sewing was good. He didn't sew. He should have put in a screen, but he later did cut me open again to put in a screen because I'm a fool, by the way. I was still doing 800 sit-ups every morning, and that destroyed his original sewing. So I've been cut open a couple of times, but I'm functioning.
So now you've ended up north. You left Toronto and you're up near Algonquin Park. And how you liking it up there?
Well, again, I moved here for love, which is a good reason. So wherever I've lived in different places in England and London. I lived there for 6 months, and then I lived in Los Angeles for a few months, and I've traveled around the world. So I always figure that I'm going to die wherever I am. So the key is figuring out how to be happy or to make the most of where you are, wherever it is you are. So living in the rural community is nothing new to me because I was raised in a rural community from 58 till 64 maybe. So I adapt easily to these types of situations where you adapt. You try to figure out how to get along in the society and learn from your neighbors and learn from your contemporaries. So I happen to be very happy where I am because I live in a forest, and I don't have any close neighbors, and I'm an extremely privileged, lucky boy.
Are you still writing?
Writing books, yes. Well, I haven't written a book since my novel, which is available for those who are curious on Book Baby, which is on the internet. I haven't written any books since then, which was 2009 was the last rewrite of the rewrites. But I write a lot of letters, often to politicians, and letters to the editor, and letters to many people in the network of media people with whom I would say I commune to some extent, such as people such as Hannah Gartner, I write to periodically. Steve Paikin, I write to him. He's is the host of the excellent show called The Agenda on TV Ontario, 5 nights a week. He is superb at his job. So, and I communicate with the people at CBC, and I, of course, communicate with Tom Mulcair and Elizabeth May. These are the best people in the game right now, in my opinion. That's federally speaking.
So no more communication with Mulrooney or anything like that?
Well, Mr. Mulrooney is no longer in a position of great influence. He does hold some influence. Sometimes he makes sense. I used to loathe him, but compared to Harper, I long for the days of Mulrooney. Harper is the most destructive force in my lifetime Canada's ever seen. He is our first fascist dictator, and people question that term fascist, and I say, look it up in the dictionary. It means authoritarian. His own caucus members cannot go to the bathroom without getting a written permission from Harper. And if you think I'm being cynical, I'm not. They voted for this war that he already began unilaterally, and they all went along with the war because his caucus members, because if they don't, they're thrown out of caucus. They become independents. Harper is a dominant, complete authoritarian in every way. He had, and his action taken at the G20th in 2010 is the action of a fascist. That's the roundup of over 1,000 people. Canadians have short memories. They're too privileged here in this country.
Canadians do have short memories. So what's next for you?
Well, I've been out and about today on a project, and I will go home and I will probably start it, because I'm one of these people that when I have something on my mind, I don't procrastinate.
No, I know. So you called me right away.
Well, I'm not able to procrastinate. It gives me gas, and I prefer to not have gas, at least that type of gas, which is anxiety gas. So when I say I'm going to do something, I tend to do it, and I do it fairly rapidly unless there's a medical reason or some event that will interfere. So I will start this project. It's a commission. And then I'll probably, I walk early in the morning, so after I start this project, I'll probably take a senior citizen's nap.
Now you're now at, I believe it's Karen Robinson Gallery, is that what it's called?
I am, and it's a beautiful gallery. If people listen to your, what is this called, an iPod?
It's a podcast.
A podmobile. Let's pod. If they pause to pod with you, if they want to see some beautiful pictures of the landscape, some very, very, very nasty pictures of politicians, and some gorgeous pictures of women, they can come and reach Karen Robinson on her website and then make an appointment to visit her gallery, which is one of the nicest galleries I've ever shown in, from coast to coast to coast to coast.
Is there any links? You mentioned your book's available through...
Book Baby, it's called. You have to buy it. I don't know how it's... I don't own a computer, but I do know my name.
Okay, and your recordings too, they can be bought off your website, or what's the best way to get those?
They can be bought off of the computer. I don't even know the technology it's called, but it's all on the computer. But they can buy a hard copy of the CDs from Karen Robinson Gallery.
Oh, okay.
Copies are actual packaged products, as opposed to downloading stuff for $1 a tune on whatever it's called.
Okay, that's perfect. So what I'll do is after we wrap up here, I'll send Karen an email and get all the links that I need for that, and we'll make sure that we can promote all that stuff.
Thank you for helping promote my work. And if I can be of use to you, you've got the phone number.
Yes, and thank you again very much. I appreciate your time.
10-4.
Thank you.
Over and out.
It's no secret that the human race has run its race, or damn near, in the name of progress, the name of security, the name of convenience. Man rapes mother, man rapes mother, and the earth is mother. There is no other mother. So if you ask me, women are the only hope. Women are the only hope. If there's any hope at all. Women are the only hope. Women are the only hope. If there's any hope at all. So much dogma, woof, woof, and deception, and perversion. Man rapes mother, man rapes his mother, and the earth is mother. There is no other mother. So if you ask me, women are the only hope. Women are the only hope. If there's any hope at all. Women are the only hope. Women are the only hope. If there's any hope at all.
Well, that's it, folks. Thanks for sticking along for another episode. And I'm going to post a lot of the links on the website, so you can check out Karen Robinson Gallery. You can check out Artists Against Racism. You can check out where to pick up some really, really cool Mendelson Joe CDs. And all that's going to be on the website, so make sure you tune in there. And do me a favor, when you go to iTunes, if you're downloading this for iTunes, if you're subscribing, give us a review. It doesn't have to be a good one. As just mention a note. That's the way that iTunes sort of does their ranking, and the more people that review us, the higher ranking we get. The higher ranking we get, the more people that are going to listen to the show, and the better we can actually promote the artists on it. So thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week, and happy Canada.
Thanks so much for listening to You Can Now with Craig Knight. You can check him out online at www.youcannow.ca.